Okay, so I'm here today with Nat. I will throw it over to you to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Nat. I am a German living in Australia. I've lived in Australia on and off since 2005. I am in sales. I actually studied international management in Germany, and then have been in sales even before uni, and have been in sales ever since. So I meet a lot of people, which is always really nice. I travel a lot. So I get to see and experience a lot of different places and interact with a lot of beautiful people. I have struggled with mental health from a very early age. My father was an alcoholic, so there was a lot of issues that came with that. He was a lovely man, but when he did drink, he could get very violent. And so there was a lot of that, which meant I had to grow up really quickly. I had to be my mother, and, to a degree of myself. And yeah, so there was a lot of trauma that came with that, which I ignored for a long time. And to a degree still have to deal with that a little bit sometimes, but I find like I am in therapy, and I find when I am in therapy consistently, it is actually like really good, and I have a good handle on everything, and life's great, really. Just got a couple of months ago, so it's all looking up and up.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing. You know what I found when you share your story, there's something that just resonates with other people, because you're not alone in that. There will be so many others that will be hearing this that also have a very similar story, that may feel like I'm the only one, but when you are brave enough to share it, there are so many out there. And I'm so sorry that you've been through that, but I know you today. I know the strong, fierce woman that you are, and it's fantastic to have you here as part of the 100 Stories campaign. Okay, so question to you: what is one thing that you do for your own mental health just to keep afloat? Not every day is going to be the best day in the world, so what's one tactic you use?
Well, I struggle a lot with negative self-talk. It's I think actually the biggest issue for me. It does come from, as I said, my parents were lovely. Unfortunately, my mum had many frustrations that she ended up taking out on us kids as well. And sometimes the verbal abuse was actually more detrimental, I feel like, than the physical, because there's a lot of negative that you're being yelled at with a lot of like negative things, and they sort of stick. I used to think that I had a pretty good handle on them, and then they never, like, I didn't think they bothered me, and I was very much like growing up, I think I built such a thick shell that people always thought, I'm super extrovert, I'm super confident, nothing can shake me. And I lived like that for a long time, but essentially all I kept doing was just pushing everything down, and at some point reached the bottom of that barrel, and everything that comes up, you're just pushing it on top of it, and it will fill up. And once it flows over, that's when it's really difficult to get a handle of. Which happened to me when I got depression really bad, and I ended up having to go into therapy, which I didn't like. If I had been honest with myself, I would have gone into therapy a lot sooner, but I just kept saying, don't be stupid, get over it. Stop whining, just essentially just get over it.
All the stigmas, right? Just
yes.
How do you say, what are the stigmas there? toughen up.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
you don't need anyone.
Yeah, that's right. And so, because, you know, there were times where I had to like drag my drunk father into bed and then make sure that I got up at like 4 a.m. in the morning to make sure that he got up and got to work and things like that. So
wow.
you sort of you become that sort of person that has to make sure that other people sort of function. So then you're like, well, I didn't need anybody. I can do this, you know, but and I do find I am a lot more forgiving with other people than I am with myself.
Right.
So like even now, I just recently had a miscarriage, and like in the beginning I was very angry, and that I found easy to handle because anger, therapist was actually saying anger was a protective mechanism for me because the other stuff I couldn't handle. And anger has subsided now, and I'm sort of in the grief stage, which I find little things can set me off, and then I start crying uncontrollably. I'm very ashamed of that. And I was talking to my therapist about it, and she said, it's fine. You need to give it the breathing space. And even now, still, I sit there and just go, I just need to get over it. Like it is so, even rationally, I know it's not going to happen. And rationally, I know I would not expect it from anybody else. It is so deeply seated within me that my first initial reaction still is just get over it. Like, so try, like definitely giving yourself the space to live through emotions, just doing it when you're alone, so it doesn't just burst out in inappropriate situations, right? Or, you know, because still people, like if I was at the supermarket and I started crying for no reason, people would still just look at me, think I'm a bit weird, you know, like because nobody really knows what's going on, right? So yeah, give yourself the breathing space and actually practice the positive self-talk because the mind is such a powerful tool. And even if you think it's not, like all this negativity will just stay. So you have to, and because it's been going on for so long, so much more practice to do the positive self-talk to get, hopefully one day, completely erase the negative self-talk.
Yeah, for sure. There is so much to unpack there, but thank you for being brave. And I think there's some fantastic insights that you've brought up there. A few things I want to comment on is, that whole, and you are spot on, but it's giving yourself the space to grieve. And again, when we share our stories, we realize, actually, I'm not the only one going through it, because it's quite a common human trait. I certainly can relate to running away from a lot of my problems. For example, when I was younger, even in the most recent, some of the lockdowns we've had this year, feeling this well of emotions coming through, and I was just like trying to push through it and, you know, kind of ignore it, right? And it got to that point that one person just had to remind me, just remember to feel it. And all I had to do was, like, the next morning, just take a deep breath and just let the emotions out. And a huge difference that made, you know. And it is tough, but be patient with yourself, you know. How would you treat a friend or a colleague? And it's not always the same standard of expectation. I do love that you kind of mentioned that. And what was the other point I wanted to, there was something in there about, you know, I am sorry that you ever had to play that role, you know. Children shouldn't necessarily have to be parents for their parents, but it does happen, you know. There is a lot that you've been able to open up there for someone who hasn't necessarily gone through a therapy process before. You know, there's things that come up as adults that we may need to unlearn or relearn, because we've learned these defense mechanisms when we were younger that may not serve us anymore. And your body will give us all these different signs to tell us that you can't keep using this tactic. And you can keep ignoring it until it slaps you down even more, you know, okay, I'm listening, I will hear this, you know. But well done for the going on this journey. And it's that self-improvement. And that shouldn't be a big deal, you know. We can all actually tap into seeing a counselor or a psychologist even when nothing's going on, you know. They can train you for resilience building, for leadership skills, having someone to talk to that understands a bit more about the human brain can be helpful. So thank you for sharing those messages.
The thing is, I can tell my therapist things that I would never say to friends and family, and not because I think they would judge me for it, but because I know it would freak them out.
Oh,
so, like the other day, as bad as it sounds, I was pulled over by. Oh no, I think I have to. I think I have to put. Hang on.
I can press pause if you like.
Yes, absolutely.
So you were just saying that there are some things you go to your therapist for because you know you've got some trusted people in your network, but you don't want to freak them out. Yeah.
So when I was like a couple of days ago, I was pulled over by the cops. This was around the time where the anger had worn off, and I just broke out in tears. And like really bad. I was driving to Warwick anyway, and then the police officer asked me why I was crying, and I just said because I'm upset. And she just said, well, it's just a minor traffic infraction. And I didn't say anything more, and she didn't ask anything more, whatever. And then when they left, I couldn't stop crying for 2 hours. I had about a 2.5 hour drive to get to Warwick, and I kept trying. Like I was going to see a client, so I had to compose myself. And every time I thought I had just composed myself, it would start all over again.
Wow.
And my eyes were bloodshot, and I'm like, I can't show up there looking like a crazy person.
Aww.
Anyway, so I got through that, and then on the way back, I was going like it was like a mountain, and there was like a pretty big cliff, and I had this one thing just pop in saying, you know, if I just went off the cliff, it would just be so easy.
Yeah, right.
Because then the pain would stop. Essentially, whenever I was in a really bad place like that, it was for me always, I just want the pain to stop, right?
Yeah.
And I would never do it. My father committed suicide, so I know all of the drama and the pain that it leaves behind. Even if you think you don't have anybody, and even if you think your family would be so much better off without you, that is so not true. You just leave behind such a rubble, and people have to deal with the fallout of that for so many years, and potentially all of their lives, right? In a way I think this will protect me from ever committing suicide myself, because I know like how bad everything will get. Even, you know, even like honestly, sometimes I think, I mean, we just got married, but sometimes I think, you know, I was like, well, what if I can't bear a child for my husband? You know, he might be better off with somebody else. So
I'm so proud of you. You have so many skills, and you just mentioned like how you spent 2 hours feeling the emotions and then composing yourself. You know, you've been such a strong like fighter throughout so much of your life. It's so powerful.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah. So, you know,
Oh, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with us.
No, that's okay. So I feel comfortable telling my therapist that I had that thing in my mind, and then I can discuss it with her and we can talk about it. But I know that if I said it to my mother, especially my mother's in Germany right now, if I told my mother, she would be freaking out. She would stop sleeping. She would, you know, be worried that she can't be here and, you know, help me. So you don't tell people sometimes, not because you feel like they're going to judge you for it, but because you know they will feel so powerless in the situation as well. And again, you're just trying to protect them.
Look, there's so much into that, and I just want to unpack some of those things. Is actually instinctively what you're doing is the right thing, because you're going to the right person for the right type of help. You know, sometimes sometimes we reach out if we don't know to go to a service or a psychologist, for example. We can reach out to those peers around us, but if they don't have those skills, it actually can overwhelm them. It can be counterproductive. They can get triggered, then you can get triggered. If they don't know what to do, you know, then everyone's just spiraling. But you've actually done the best thing by going to the right type of support that you yourself know that you need. And you know, we want to be able to smash some of these stigmas. The stigma that you can't go to someone in your network, maybe you could, but you know, maybe it's in your own time. You do you, you're on your own journey, you know, and if you are protective of other people, that's your story, that's where you are right now, you know. The other one I wanted to unpack was, it was a really interesting response that you just shared from the police interaction. Thank you for sharing it. It's important to know who to tell and who not to tell, you know, and sometimes police are actually, they're really well equipped with skills in dealing with some very tricky situations and can be community allies. But, you know, you yourself need to judge and assess, is this person the trusted person that I can talk to? And if you didn't feel like they were being that open, or if they weren't necessarily the right person, then, you know, let it pass. But the coppers are an interesting one, because us working with lots of children and young people, there's a lot of stigmas. Don't go to the cops. You know, they're terrified. If something whirlwinding like a story like yours is going on at home, they're terrified to tell the cops due to the fear of getting into trouble, or the fear of what would happen to that family unit, etc. But in doing so, they end up taking on so many more burdens, etc. And there are so many trusted adults and services that they can tap into to help support them. The third one I wanted to point out, just to unpack, is you told a beautiful story about how trauma can affect us, right? And this wave of the pandemic is a psychological one. When something happens, it is pretty heavy and a pretty big experience. We may fight or flight. We may go on adrenaline. And that adrenaline helps keep us surviving. The pain is intense.
Yes.
The adrenaline is there to keep us surviving and to numb some of that pain. But then one day that numbing is going to stop and the emotions are going to flood. And it's so common when someone has experienced trauma. So thank you so much for sharing that in your story, because I know here in Australia, like, for example, the bushfires have been traumatizing experience for people, COVID, lockdowns, all sorts of things. And there are people that are going to be experiencing this that have never had any mental health issues before in their life, who think they've been doing all right running on this adrenaline, and one day it's just going to overwhelm them, you know. Thank you for being brave and sharing that little flicker of suicide ideation. I mean, it takes so much courage to share that. I'm curious as to what brought you back around. You know, you were definitely upset that day and there was a little inkling. Is it the fact that you were able to see your psychologist that you knew had been able to support it, or was there a specific action or a thought within you, or does it go back to that drive that you mentioned before, because you know that from firsthand what that experience can do to individuals? it's stuck in the back of your mind knowing I cannot let that happen.
Yeah, it is that. And there are like some core people in my life, which I think if I ended up doing that, because I think based on my childhood experience, one of the most pronounced things that I experience is wanting to protect others. Sometimes so that I actually have to make sure that I'm not overly protective and keeping them from things that might help them grow. So especially like when it's mostly like my nieces that I'm speaking of, you know, like making sure that, you know, they're confident and they can go and do things, even though if I think of them doing those things, that terrifies me, but I know that it's good for their development. But yeah, so I think it's trying to, like, if I feel like this pain is so bad, I have had worse pain than that. So, and I know it can pass because I've been through it. But it's really trying to, and I actually love life. I am actually a happy person. So, you know, like, and I know that I just need to get past this, but the thing that really sort of keeps me is don't ruin other people's lives, because it will hurt them to no end. And I just want to protect them.
No, I hear you there. It is interesting, putting on my psychology hat again, just to see in case this is helpful knowledge to other people. Someone who has past experience of trauma, like firsthand, I can share even myself, like I felt that huge, heavy wound and the pain was so intense. And I have shared in another story before, but the pain was so intense for me to hit rock bottom was, I didn't know what else to do, but I reached out to alcohol to numb the pain. Like, and that's when I realized, I'm like, this is not healthy. You know, it just, all it did was just numb a little tiny bit of relief. And it has helped give me insights as to why other people could turn to some different, you know, pathways, etc. But I did overcome it. And I do definitely relate to what you said. I have overcome so much worse than this. But it doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not going to be triggered again, right? So from someone who's experienced trauma before, there's this big, open, heavy wound that will open up again as soon as something else like comes in and like cracks into being quite difficult. You'll feel some of that heavy heart. And it is unfortunate, but the reality is, if you have had some of that experience when you're younger, some of these other traumas you may experience in life, you know, it can trigger more healing. Someone who may not have gone,
I think it might, like visually to think about it, it might be like that cold sore virus, right? Because once you catch it, you will always have it. It's always in your body. So it's always there. It's just when you're not paying attention and your immune system is run down, it will break out. So you have that trauma, you will always carry that trauma. It's like an infection in your heart almost, or in your soul. And if you keep treating it, it's fine, and it won't, like, it will always be there, but it won't affect your life too much. But if you don't treat it and you just feel like, okay, well, I've been managing great and I don't have to do all of these things anymore, I don't have to go and see anybody anymore because I've worked my shit out, right? You will fall back into those old habits, and you, like, I find I will, if I don't keep track on it, like I will fall back into those old habits, and I will end up trying to push things down again. And I will, the first thing that is always in my mind is get over it. You know, stop being an idiot, get over it, move on. And that's when like I know now, I'm like, okay,
that's my trigger.
Well, this is about to this is about to hit the fan. I need to go and get this sorted before it like really gets out of control.
And what a fantastic example of like managing that situation. And I'm not underplaying those that may not have lived experience of trauma, because, you know, people can still experience grief and all sorts of different challenges in life. It is just a common thing that, unfortunately, like those that are aware of that big trauma wound, you know, it can just come back into play just to remind us. But look, with time, you will overcome that. It's rebuilding the skills, which does remind me of one point I wanted to share from a talking point you had before, is our negative self-talk brain. I attended a lecture years ago now, but still, on emotional intelligence, and I thought it was a really smart analogy to describe it. Our ancestors, the caveman people, they used to run around all day long and look for trouble, because literally it's life or death. If a snake comes up, you know, that's going to potentially kill them and their clan, and they were all about survival of the fittest, you know. Anyway, you understand the analogy. So the thing is, we have that primal brain in us that even in this modern day society will go around and scan for problems. And that's why we have to kind of like catch it. Because if you notice, you catch up with some girlfriends or something and it's like, how's your life? And it's this battle of who's busiest, who's got bigger problems going on. You know, we are attracted to gossip. We are attracted to and wired naturally to think of all the different problems that are going on. But this is where we can build ourselves to be resilient, and you're working on it. You know, you've got some great understanding now of some of your trigger points, and you're rewiring some of the brain synapses from that very old patterning. But other things that we can do to continue is we actually have the superpower of the more modern part of the brain, which through mindfulness practice can reverse that fight or flight. So it's the whole building things like meditation daily, or yoga, or, you know, what you're doing, being aware of the negative thoughts that are spiraling you into that place. Because the more we practice and build those skills, the less the fight or flight can respond. So it's something that we do need to, literally every single one of us are going to be challenged with that.
And it does make such a difference as well. Like, I noticed that as well. If I had like a good workout routine pre-COVID, and since then I have been struggling to get back into it, even with the like incentive to get in shape of getting into my wedding dress and things, right? It's still been such a struggle. But if I work out routine, like, you know, routinely, and like make sure that at least I do it 3 times a week, or, you know, if I eat, like, don't underestimate the power of health and nutrition, because it does also, like, generally when you feel better in your body, it will help with feeling better in your mind, also vice versa. But it does, like, one can't do without the other.
100%. And that's like, that is a beautiful way to kind of like wrap this up, because that is why we advocate for prevention. Plan on the days that you're feeling well, build that routine and those strategies, because when you're going to get hit with those things, you know, just life is going to throw you all sorts of challenges. You're going to be way more equipped to be able to bounce back than if you have ignored that planning or your own kind of like body needs, etc. So look, it's been wonderful chatting to you today. Thank you so much for being open and vulnerable, and no doubt there is actually so much value in what you have shared today, and I really do hope that our listeners can relate to so many aspects of your story. And I will make sure to tag you on social media just in case anyone wants to just get in touch or just share some insights with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, Ellie.
Brilliant. I look forward to continuing with more stories in the 100 Stories campaign.
Yeah, I can't wait for that to come out and, you know, go through that, because I'm sure that I'll like be able to learn a lot from that as well.
Fantastic. Okay, we will share your story shortly. Bye for now.
Thank you.